Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well. I've got a bonus upload for you all. Before we get into it, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and the membership are in the description below. Merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook version. They all were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon. And folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. And folks, they really do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's upload. Shall we? Alright, so this bonus is a subscriber's submission. Had a horrifying encounter. And this is the photo that you're going to see in a few seconds is the photo that they captured of whatever they encountered. It's once again not the greatest photo. I honestly don't see much in the photo. The encounter is horrifying, but he sent me the photo with the encounter, so I'm going to share both with you guys. Let's get into it. The events described happened 2 days ago in Oklahoma. I'll describe things to the fullest extent possible. Where I live is a semi-urban area close to a river with construction projects, neighborhoods still surrounded and laced with densely wooded creeks. Despite being graced with a nearby Walmart and shops, my side of the town is rather vacant of people anytime past midnight. Many stretches of streets are without lights and are surrounded by woods. They are pitch black at most times. I've spent hours walking both through the center of town and through these wooded areas to get home, especially at night. I've done so high drunk. I've done so through the dead of night, and at dusk and dawn as well. Despite the occasional unease, I've never heard or seen anything to panic me except from the hoot of an owl once before. Prior to this, I had the utmost confidence in myself when walking here. I've slept in unfinished houses here with my friends and not been uncomfortable at all. About a week before this, me and my friends had a bonfire at a nice spot on the other side of town. We felt uneasy despite being there often. Once we had gotten set up, our Bluetooth speaker started to glitch. Something was wrong. Suddenly, the song slowed down, played backwards, then played fast before returning to normal. My friend Jay started staring at the wood line not too far off and said, with fear in his voice, that there was something in the woods 7 to 8 feet tall walking and watching us. We eventually booked it. Fast forward to 2 days later. Jay had been wanting to get out of his house for the night. He had been living at a friend's house, and I had nothing to do. We decided to go to the bowling alley nearby and hang out. I had smoked the remains of a blunt, and he was already high. We got there, decided to stay in the parking lot a while, then went inside. We once left, came back. By the time we had decided to leave, it was already closing time, 1 a.m. We were both pretty close to being sober again. We had an enjoyable time. Jay had acquired some alcohol, and we intended to drink it in a remote location and just relax. I knew about a small, partially finished neighborhood on my block that was surrounded by a creek and had a dog park. During the day, the park was a nice retreat from the sun. At night, the park was isolated by trees from the neighborhood, and only a few streetlights gave illumination on the road, which ended at a wood line with a trail leading over the creek. You would have to cross into the darkness, pass over a culvert, and then you were within the park. Jay had suggested we walk into the park and joked about seeing a crawler. Though it was funny, there was a slight hint of concern at the idea. We drove to the small neighborhood and immediately felt deeply uneasy. The street leading to the wood line was straight, and at its end was illuminated by a single tall light. We got there at around 1:05 in the morning. We knew we were going to be posted up for some time and had decided to park backwards to make our escape easier. This put the wood line within about 15 feet behind us. However, Jay had to unplug his new speaker setup from the car battery or risk it dying, which meant we had to get out of the car, open the hood, and get back in. The internal fear was just there, but we both knew it had to be done. There was no choice. There was no banter at this point. I found myself telling him to hurry up and not to stop, not to look around. He didn't listen, but said nothing. I felt watched, and we both could hear subtle quiet noises, which I can't describe as anything but unusual. After a short time, we quickly re-entered the car. At this point, a deep fear and dread had grasped me. The fun of the night had evaporated the moment we had pulled underneath that light. The feeling of being watched left us, looking behind us and around us for a minute or two. We could still hear the faint noises, but they were indiscernible. I tried to change the subject to drinking, but this was shot down with a mutual agreement. We felt surrounded, but we didn't know why, and yet we did know what was doing it. Suddenly, Jay swears he can see something behind us to our left. Due to my position in the passenger seat, I could not make out what he saw. I started looking out the back right window, and as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw something which still causes the hair on my arms and necks to rise. I looked at it for 15 seconds, processing what I was seeing. I couldn't believe it. About 10 feet away, close to the wood line, or perhaps among it, I saw a form clear as day. It seemed to be broken up by the brush, but it was close and large. I believe I only saw a small part of this thing. I saw no legs or head, but it was almost as if I was looking at its back. The skin was a sickly white. It looked like dry animal skin. Never in my life had I ever seen something which demanded an immediate and overwhelming fear response. I panicked and yelled at my friend, "Drive, just drive now." I know rationally that such beings most likely couldn't do anything to us in a car, but every sense was on overdrive and instinct took over. We immediately hightailed it out of there. I had the chance to look behind us the entire time as we left, and as I was staring back at that light pole, from the direction Jay had said he saw something, I saw something for about 2 blinks of an eye run underneath that light pole and disappear into the darkness. It was sickly skinny. It was running on all fours. I saw its head as well. The thing was running incredibly fast, at least as fast as the car was going. At this point, I knew there was 2 of them. I knew they were real. And I knew I was terrified in a way I have never been before. I remembered hearing about these creatures hating cameras, and I told Jay to take us to Walmart right away. As I mentioned earlier, the streets at this time are empty and typically dark and wooded. We were in a state of horror, and we were processing what had just happened. We realized we couldn't return home at this point. The only thing that we could do to pass the night was attempt to sleep, would be to park in a secure place, which shockingly meant not home. This happened in my block, remember. As we make the 2-mile drive, Jay freaks out and says he saw one running down the street on one of the side roads. Personally, my eyes have terrible night vision. Being that things tend to be blurry in the darkness, I could sense some kind of movement behind us. I could not see anything as certain as I had back at the wood line. We were the only car on the road until the very end of the trip.
A sense of exhaustion had hit us as soon as we parked. We finally had time and a chance to process what had just happened. The moment I began to tell what I saw, I started to tear up and cry. Though I was not weeping per se, to my astonishment, he told me what he had seen. Another crouching down, as it often are described, straight arms crossed and all. He also cried and laughed. This laughing and crying occurred multiple times throughout the night. I was stunned, excited, scared, and felt absolute dread as we sat in the emptyish Walmart parking lot at 1:15 in the morning. Nothing in my life had scared me to such an extent that just talking about it could induce fear. As we talked and eventually calmed down as much as one can, Jay had noticed movement from the bushes about 70 to 100 feet in front of us, as we had parked, pointing towards yet another unlit road which ran across another gigantic creek. At this distance and the lighting condition, my vision was blurry, but I could pick up something as well. In the bushes, we could see something resembling a gray mass, which sometimes presented itself as a head, which just ever so barely popped up. We see this for 10-15 minutes, after which point it definitely moved around or another one of them had arrived. The reason being, in another bush to the right, we got a somewhat clearer sight of the thing, as the bush was slightly more lit up. At some point I saw a pair of skinny white legs inside the bush itself. They ever so slightly shifted around and then disappeared back into the brush. I excitedly told Jay, as this was the creepiest sight of it I had while parked in the lot. At another point, Jay gasped and said it was standing up. Again, it was. Dark out and my vision sucks, but I could yet again sense behind the blurriness that something was indeed there. It was indeed very tall, even above these 4-foot bushes. After this, I see a reflection of 2 tiny lights from around the left bush, but weirdly, almost entirely on the ground. It had to have been in the grass, and the skeptical part of me says it might have been just an animal, but something was definitely reflecting back at us. The entire duration, while parked, we had been taking pictures, and I had the idea to take a video. However, due to the dubious quality of the camera, distance lighting, and unclean windshield, these pictures and video were rather inconclusive. It must be noted that when Jay had attempted to take the first picture, it darted off, and he snapped it halfway through the process, though the image is unsurprisingly unclear. After I took a video, we stopped paying attention to the bush and started talking again. We were exhausted, emotionally in absolute turmoil, and physically looked like we had been up for days on end. We were still uncomfortable, and I was thirsty. At this time, it was closer to 2:30 in the morning. I suggested we go to the gas station that's open 24/7 for some water, and it was much more urban. As we left, we came to a stoplight, and to our right was another set of brush and trees. It went back quite a ways, and was dark past the point, despite us exiting a well-developed parking lot. For example, there was a Sonic directly to our left. Jay had mentioned he had seen something inside of this area watching us before we turned left to the spot at the light. Fear once again struck me as the woods were on my right. The light was red. There were no cars, no people but us. I looked back into the woods, and my eyes were adjusting. I could vaguely make out something, as Jay told me he saw something there. I looked away for a minute, looking back, and locked eyes with it. It must have been behind a tree. I could only see its upper head area. It blended in with the trees by its color, but stood out just the same by its shape. I looked into 2 large voids surrounded by a round head which seemed to be defined in shape by its 2 pits. They seemed to be sunken in, pale white, turned gradually into an abyss of emptiness. It must have been standing, even back a ways. It was much taller than the car. The moment I locked eyes with it, I never blinked, never looked away. All my senses went haywire. Adrenaline immediately hit me. The second I locked eyes with it, I was in a state of internal hell, animal fear. I told Jay I saw it, but I rapidly slid into talking to it. First, I tried telling it off, to leave us be, and I then didn't have faith in any higher power, but I quickly started praying to it. I didn't know what else to do. My voice was angry and firm. There was no hint of weakness. Pure instinct was taking over, for as much as one's natural senses can lead them in confronting something that confronts our being as much as this did. No tears grazed my cheeks then. The light would not turn from being red. We were the only car there. We were stuck by the light. And I, the only one looking at this thing, was stuck looking at it. When I concluded my prayer, I told Jay that he needed to run the light. Even as I was doing this, I was staring at it. For what felt like too long, the car finally shot off and we ran the light. The moment I broke eye contact with it, I burst into tears and started to cry. I rarely cry, and nothing has ever put enough fear into me to make me cry. No crying ever felt as uncontrollable as this, no fear as great as this. No exhaustion, no longing for the day as great as this. There was no evil as great as this, as the one I had just stared into. All light in its eyes were lost. I have never been a firm believer in the idea of absolute good and evil, but since this has changed. When I was talking to it, I was not there. Only the most basic aspect of my being remained, to stand up to this creature. No plan, no decision, no resolution, no wisdom, no knowledge can prepare you when you look into this creature's eyes. Anything that happens within your mind during and after this is forever imprinted. We drove to the gas station, and I felt shattered in some way. I was tired, and we spent the night in the parking lot until the sun rose, at which point we then decided to go to our respected homes. If I could recommend a word of advice for anyone looking for these things, don't. But if you do, just know the image of it may be unbearable to your senses. Chances are whatever plans you cooked up to protect yourself or confront it will be conducted under an extreme state of fear or distress. As ready as you think you will be, you won't be mentally, ever. You will have only your gut or God to guide you. It seems to me that the idea that this thing is demonic may have some credence to it, and I've never been particularly predisposed to beliefs. It seems to me it is indeed physical and organic, but there is something to which does feed on fear and knows us deeply. Fear it less, and you shall see it less. Fear it more, and you shall see it more and quickly, as my friend and I did. I don't know if this means talking or thinking. But perhaps common sense would say yes. The idea that it will avoid cameras able to see infrared seems likely to hold water, though I cannot say for certain. I didn't hear some crazy sounds people have heard, and thankfully not. Its sight was enough for me. I also did not talk to it telepathically, didn't hear voices inside of my head either. I know what we saw that night, and it was terrifying.
Quick bonus to get us through the night. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. An absolute horrifying encounter. Guys, your support is what makes this channel continue to grow and go, and what makes it so special. The community you guys have created in the comment section is amazing. The support and kindness you have for each other is second to none. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there. They are dangerous. Share a little bit of information with those that you love and care about, and it may just save their life someday. Until next time, God bless you all.